Anybody's been waiting for us. We met in closed session and no action was taken. Good afternoon and welcome to the Elk Grove Unified School District's virtual board workshop, special board meeting through the Zoom webinar platform. We thank you for your joining us and your patience in advance as we navigate this platform for conducting school board meetings. Legislative bodies, including school districts, are permitted to hold board meetings telephonically or by other electronic means because on March 17th, 2020, the governor issued Executive Order N2920 suspending certain provisions of the California Ralph M. Brown Act. In addition, consistent with the March 19th, 2020 statewide shelter-in-place orders issued by the governor, Executive Order N3320, the Sacramento County Shelter-at-Home orders issued on March 19th, 2020 and April 7th, 2020, and the Center for Disease Control, CDC's control social distancing guidelines, which discourage public gatherings. This special board meeting is being conducted via the Zoom webinar platform. Soriano, do we have public comment today?
Madam Board President Albani, yes, we do have public comment related to discussion items.
On Zoom?
One Zoom and the rest are written.
Okay. Those indicating in advance of this meeting through the Google platform that they would like to speak during public comment using the Zoom platform, your name will be called upon during the appropriate section of the meeting. At that time, your microphone will be unmuted on your screen at home. There will be a message asking you to unmute. Once you click or tap to unmute, your microphone will be live and you will then be able to give your public comment. When your time is complete or you have finished, your microphone will be muted by the district. You must have the most recent version of the Zoom platform client to make public comments live. If you do not have the latest version, you will not be able to make your live comment. During your comments through the Zoom platform, we will provide a timer will be available on the screen, and at the end of the comment time, you will be muted. The district believes in an inclusive, welcoming, safe environment for its meetings for all of our community. Public comments provide an opportunity for members of the public to address the Board of Education in an open meeting. The board will not take action or discussion on any item not appearing on the posted agenda except authorized by law. The board respects each individual's rights to express ideas and opinions, and pursuant to applicable law and board policy, we will not prohibit public criticism of the board or the district. It is an ongoing objective of the district to serve all our students and to prepare them to flourish as responsible, ethical, and productive citizens. In preserving this mission, we kindly ask in making public comment, you refrain from the use of profanity, exercise tolerance of others and their viewpoints, and exemplify model behavior. Please be mindful students are watching. You are encouraged to address the board and the public in a respectful manner such that all those observing, from children to adults, are made to feel welcome, safe, and valued. The board will not permit any disturbances or willful interruption of board meetings. Persistent and excessive disruption by any individual group shall be grounds for the board president to terminate the privilege of addressing the board. We appreciate the public's participation and your assistance in helping the board meetings be kept efficient, effective, and respectful. All written electronic public comments that were submitted will be provided to the Board of Education in writing. Today's meeting is being video recorded and will be available on the district's YouTube channel. Mr. Rob Pierce has agreed to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Mr. Pierce.
Thank you, President Albiani. If everyone would please stand, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice.
Thank you, Mr. Pierce. Our first item is our consent agenda. Ms. Soriano, are there any comments, public comments on our consent agenda?
Madam Board President Albani, there are no public comments on the consent agenda.
Thank you. I'd like to call for a motion to approve item 1 on the consent agenda. So move. Moved by Dr. Martinez-Solier, seconded by Mr. Perez. Roll call vote. Mr. Perez? Aye. Dr. Martinez-Solier? Aye. Mr. Yang?
Aye.
Ms. Jamerson? Aye. Ms. Cheris Espinoza? Aye. Mr. Fortuna?
Aye.
And myself as an aye. It is unanimous. Item number 3, action item, expanded learning opportunities grant plan adoption. Ms. Soriano, are there any public comments related to this item?
Madam Board President Albiani, there are no public comments related to the action items.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to call Mr. Cerruti to present.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, and good evening to all board members, Superintendent Hoffman and Ms. Avalos. I respectfully request the board give consideration and approve the district's ELO plan. The district met all planning and development criteria, particularly as it relates to stakeholder engagement. And as we've shared with the board and the community over the past several meetings, it laid out our overall plan for that extends from this summer through next summer and all in between, including the intercession, expanding it before and after school programs and tutoring. And with that, I respectfully request consideration for approval. Thank you.
Okay, I can call for a motion to adopt unless someone needed to discuss.
I move approval of the expanded learning opportunities grant plan.
Moved by Mr. Fortuna,
Second.
seconded by Dr. Martina Solier. So roll call vote, Dr. Martina Solier,
Aye.
Mr. Yang,
Aye.
Ms. Jamerson,
Aye.
Ms. Charis Espinoza,
Aye.
Mr. Fortuna,
Aye.
Mr. Perez,
Aye.
and I myself is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant Plan Adoption Elk Grove Charter. Ms. Soriano, are there any public comments related to this item?
Madam Board President Albiani, there are no public comments related to this item.
Okay, there are no comments on this item. Mr. Levine, hi.
It's so weird to see you and it's not midnight yet.
I know, right? So weird. I was going to say it's so weird to see you in person. I'm so excited. So I'm here this evening. Good evening, board and Superintendent Hoffman and all members of the district and Ms. Avalos. I'm Principal Levine of Elk Grove Charter School, and I'm here to present our school's ELO plan. We as well have followed all criteria to gain input from our stakeholders for the plan, and we are requesting that the board adopt our plan as it has been sent to you.
Okay, I'd like to call for a motion. Unless someone needed to make a discussion or have a question. May I get a motion then, please? To approve, to adopt Elk Grove Unified School District's Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant Plan for the Elk Grove Charter.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Jamerson, seconded by Ms. Charis Espinoza. A roll call vote. Mr. Yang?
Aye.
Ms. Jamerson?
Aye.
Ms. Charis Espinoza?
Aye.
Mr. Fortuna?
Aye.
Mr. Perez?
Aye.
Dr. Martina Solier?
Aye.
And myself, Aditi Manis. Thank you, Mr. Levine. Nice to see you. Okay, I would like to go to discussion items. We have the 2021-2022 budget update, May revise. Ms. Soriano, are there any public comments related to this item?
Madam Board President, there are no public comments related to discussion item number 1, but there are for number 2.
We will come back to you. Ms. Hayes.
Good evening, President Albiani, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, and Ms. Avalos. I'm going to apologize before I start this presentation. Apparently, it is very dark. So I don't know if you guys can see on your screen okay or not, but are you guys good? Okay, good. I'm probably going to have a hard time reading because my eyes are old. Okay, so today I'm bringing to you a presentation that the information we're going to go through was provided by School Services of California. As a reminder, School Services is the entity by which goes through the state budget and puts their details together for LEAs across the state as far as the implementation and what the governor's education budget provides. So we're going to take a look at economic effects due to COVID-19, Proposition 98, the local control funding formula, deferrals, new proposals, one-time new proposals, and other learning options. For the economic effects of COVID-19, originally when we were building our 2021 adopted budget, at that point in time, we thought that there was going to be another recession. It actually happened just quite the opposite. The state budget right now has a $100 billion surplus. The governor is calling it the California Comeback Plan. California's unemployment rate is still high. It's at 8.3% as of March. And $12 billion of the state's California Comeback Plan is directed to cash payments to expand the stimulus here in California. This is a chart out of the governor's budget itself. You can see that there's a huge increase in spending. And there's also a large amount being deposited into the budget stabilization account at the very bottom. You can see there it was 12 billion, now 15. That's important to note. As we increase the stabilization account at the state level, that does present a cap for reserves at the local level. And so we'll be watching that very closely going forward. Talking about the budget stabilization account, there's 8.3 billion in the account, and the proposal is to increase that up to 15.9 billion for 21-22 school year. Talking about Proposition 98, this was very interesting. I didn't realize that this had happened, but there were supplemental payments that the governor and the legislature came to agreement on that they would make on top of Prop 98. Had those payments come to fruition, school districts would have received about $18 billion. Instead, the January proposal proposed a one-time supplemental payment of $2.3 billion and pulling back the others. In his May proposal, he's now proposing to permanently increase the Prop 98 by $2.7 billion, but it's specific to help the ongoing costs of universal transition kindergarten. So in his proposal, there's a bunch of expansion with our preschool age students and preschool for all. By doing this, though, he's going to propose that he retract the supplemental payments, so those won't be happening in his May proposal. So we're going to watch to see how Prop 98 turns out after this when they adopt. Prop 98 is the largest it's been in years. In addition to the guaranteed estimates for 21-22, also updates the current year and prior year fiscal years. And so this makes my job a little bit difficult because it goes back in time. So for 19-20, you can see from the January proposal, he had 79.5 billion. May revised turned out to be less than that. In 2021, you see the change from January of 82.8 billion, and the proposal grew to 92.8 billion. That is a historic high, and it's nice to see. However, it is still just the minimum. And looking at Prop 98 funding over the years, you can see there in 13-14 school year was the implementation of the local control funding formula. We get all the way out to 19-20 school year. You see the 13.5 billion increase into 2021 of 92.8 billion. And then a small increase in 21-22. Huge growth for us over time. But it does propose some kind of problems that we have with the GAN limit. So much like the school district, the state has a spending cap. When it exceeds the spending cap under Proposition 4, the state has to return monies to taxpayers and to local governments. And so we're anticipating that this will come to fruition, and it's only happened one other time. That was back in 1986. That the GAN limit itself, we won't feel the impact if we get to feel the impact of that until 22-23 school year. And because the state revenues, when it comes to Proposition 98 and how schools are funded, it's a 3-year window. So they'll go back to 2021, 21, 22, and then shore that up. So of the 8.1 billion that would be coming back to K-14 education, that may look different. There may be changes just in legislation, et cetera, that they'll do something different. But right now, based on current law, we would expect the 8.1 billion to come back to K-14 schools. Other initiatives that were part of Proposition 98 is the, you see the COLA there, 185.4 million, that's ongoing, 4.05%, which is a combination of the statutory COLA that we should have received in fiscal year 2021, plus the statutory COLA in 21-22, and then there was an augmentation. There's 75 million that's proposed ongoing to expand dual enrollment. Another 564.1 million one time for deferred maintenance. 326.5 million one time to fully retire all of the deferrals. And then 30 million ongoing for basic need centers, and then 50 million in one time in a block grant. And looking at the change between what the governor proposed in January versus what he proposed in May, the LCFF funding increased to 3.2 billion. Proposition 98, you can see the change there is over the 3 years. The statutory COLA, 1.5% was increased to 1.7. The compounded COLA over the 2 years of 3.84 was adjusted to 4.05. That combined with the 1.7% statutory COLA gets us to the mega COLA of 5.07%, all of which is proposed as ongoing. The cap on district reserves, we expect that to be triggered in the 22-23 school year. When they talk about the 10% cap, that is a combination of restricted and unrestricted fund balances, including your 2%. With all of the federal revenues coming into the district, we anticipate that just by that alone, we will be over the cap. And so we'll be bringing back to the board ways to designate reserves for future spending. Then looking at the local control funding formula, there's different components to it. The local control funding formula is comprised of the base and supplemental and concentration. There are 2 grade span adjustments, one in K3, one in 9-12. The purpose of the grade span adjustment in grades K through 3 is to ensure that we are maintaining class sizes of 24:1 unless bargained differently. The 2.6 for grades 9 through 12 is specific to cover costs of career technical education. And then we have the supplemental and concentration grant, which is based on our unduplicated pupils of English learners, free and reduced price program eligible students, and foster youth. So here's what that means. You have your base grant. So everybody in the state starts off with the base grant for ADA. We then apply COLA to it, and that gets us an adjusted base grant. They then add the grade span adjustment for K3 and 9 through 12. We get an adjusted base grant per ADA amount for the different grade spans. Then we get an additional 20% of the adjusted base grant for all of our ADA. And then because we are a district that has a UPP above 55% and we're on the edge, we're at 55.56%, we do get the additional 50% of the adjusted base grant. There is a proposal to change the concentration portion of the LCFF. The proposal is to spend another 1.1 billion in ongoing funding, but it would increase the factor for concentration from 50% to 65%. With that increase, there is intention to spend those monies in a very specific manner. So if this was to come to fruition, then we would need to increase the number of counselors, teachers, paras, nurses, et cetera, for anybody that can serve students. This was interesting because it will impact the LCAP. And so when we go, the reason I make the statement is we have to look at our unduplicated percentage pupils and the concentration portion of that, as well as the supplemental portion. And those are written into actions and services within our LCAP. Our district has been ahead of the curve when it comes to spending what that minimum calculation is. But with this influx of new money, depending on what our unduplicated percentage looks like, if it stays above 55%, then we would play in this. But it would be then having to spend those monies in those specific areas to target those children only. The reason that becomes complicated is this money then becomes in direct competition with Title I and other federal funds and other categorical funds that we receive from the state. So they say it's not supplanting, but I think you get into supplanting regardless. And so it becomes very tricky, especially when we have money from the federal government coming for the same purpose and intent. So it'll be interesting to see if this comes to fruition. We still continue to see them trying to get additional resources out to school districts, specifically targeting very specific subgroups. And so far, the LCFF doesn't do, I think, what they intended when you're just lumped in with the percent. Because it's difficult for us to get funds to, let's say, a school that's not high poverty, then it's more difficult. You have those free and reduced lunch kids and those other kinds of students that would generate these funds, and it's hard to get them to them.
Ms. Hayes, if I may. I
Yes.
promised Ms. Hayes I'd weigh in from left field here, really to give her a chance to take a breath, but the board is probably well aware that the legislature, both the Senate and the Assembly, now came forward with a unified package that was just released today. I'm going to weigh in just to share for the board so they understand in the particular kind of high level areas that are of significant change from the governor's May revision and what the legislature's pushing for. This area is one of them. So the legislative package does continue the $1.1 billion. However, the concentration grant would not be increased. The supplemental grant would be increased from 20% to 23.3%. They heard from a number of different organizations and school districts that all of these children meet the same definition in order to be supplemental in nature. But under this proposal, only concentration grant districts would get those dollars for those students. And in the legislative package, all students who meet that definition would be able to receive that funding.
So what does this mean for Elk Grove? So we saw the mega COLA. That's going to generate about $10,114 per ADA. We're using an ADA value from fiscal year 2021. That's because of distance learning. That's the value that we would be compensated as far as how the state looks at our ADA. So no growth is built in, and we're going to keep our fingers crossed till all of our kiddos come back. That's going to generate an additional $615 million for 21-22. That is a $29.4 million in new ongoing revenue above the 2021 school year. And we're going to talk a little
Can I
bit
ask
of,
a quick question.
yes.
Sorry, just clarification. So even though we're presenting that as a per ADA number as an average, that does not mean that that entire amount can be spent on all of those kids, because some of the funds proposed by the governor are essentially categoricals, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
We got rid of categorical programs to do this. So your statement, I don't quite understand that. Can
So Governor Newsom has been giving us categorical money outside of the LCFF. The slide here, that 615 million, we have to spend, and I'm not gonna remember the numbers off the top of my head, the supplemental concentration portion must be spent on very specific activities for those kids. And I thought that's what the question I was addressing with
but
Ms. Chairez Espinoza.
it is not categorical.
Not in the true term as categorical as it's separate money coming in from a different spot. I mean, it still comes to us, but it comes to us as one lump sum of money.
Well, I kind of understand why you think it's categorical, because it has specific guidelines.
Yes, it
Correct.
does.
But okay, then, okay.
Yeah.
She has
But
to,
yet it's targeted
Yes.
for those three targeted populations.
Right, Mr.
Right.
Perez, just one thing, just for a clarification piece, under Governor Brown, he basically eliminated the categoricals, went to LCFF.
Right.
Since Governor Newsom has come in, you can use the word pet projects, you can go, whether they're actually categoricals or not, but that mentality is back where he's identifying specific issues he wants addressed, and he's taking Prop $98 and targeting them to that category. So it feels like categorical in the way that he's organizing the budget, where previously when under Governor Brown, we would get a lump sum and they would say, these are things we want you to pay attention to, but there was flexibility at the local level to make decisions how those dollars were going to be spent. Under Governor Newsom, it's been more prescriptive in the types of things he is expecting those dollars to be spent on. So it feels more categorical than it did.
I see. Okay, okay.
And I also think that Ms. Hayes in her position must track them. And so to her, she's required to track them a certain category to be able to prove them and pass the audit. So to her, even more so to us, they seem categorical because they have to be put under this number and be able to be shown to auditors.
If it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck,
Right.
we call it a duck. If it looks like a categorical and acts like a categorical, we call it a categorical, even though technically it might not be.
Yes, but I get leery when you say that it's a categorical program because, at one time, it shifted that they didn't want too many categorical programs, and that's why we had Prop 30 back in 2012 to get more support and resources for these particular students. So I'm leery that you identify
We
it.
say it a little bit differently.
Yes, okay,
So
right,
LCFF comes to us in 3 different components
right,
as one lump sum.
right,
We are still required to designate actions and services
right,
in a very specific manner.
correct.
The reason it's not technically a categorical because we have the flexibility of determining what those services are rather than the state dictating what the services are.
That I agree, maybe. I don't want to get over there, but we had issues on that. So, okay, I'll leave it at that.
So we're looking at cash here. We don't get to talk about cash very often because I usually bring budget information to you, but cash is important. We had deferrals that we were experiencing this school year. And those deferrals in the May revise were not addressed in totality. There was a certain percentage that the governor proposed to make whole, but our June apportionment is being deferred to July. Under current law, it has to be paid back to districts by July 15th. So essentially what's going to happen in the month of June is we're not going to receive our apportionment for that month until July 15th. So what that means is Carrie over in accounting and our county office monitors our cash to make sure that we're not cash poor, and we're not. So the board took action at the last board meeting to authorize the district to borrow funds internally in order to make sure that nothing ends in a negative status. And so that's what we're exercising right now. So even though we won't receive our June apportionment, there is enough cash within all of the funds under Elk Grove Unified that this will be okay for us. So we're hoping that through the May revise or through the state budget adoption process that they will address the deferrals. Then looking at special education, the COLA is being applied to the state portion of special education, but not the mega COLA. So 4.05% is being applied. So that isn't going to be an increase from $625 per ADA to $650. So we'll take anything from that direction. So that's positive for us. So it's 2 years now of additional ongoing state revenue to support special education. And then 300 million ongoing was proposed for special education early intervention grant. We've been seeing a number of changes within the preschool world. For those of you that are not familiar, we are bound to serve students starting at age 3, even though we do not receive ADA funding for them. And then the AB 602 funding model is funded on district ADA. It's not necessarily derived based on pupils. And the reason that's important is if your population of special needs students is growing quicker than your ADA, we're not getting the benefit of that. So that's why you see that there's such a large contribution from the unrestricted general fund over to special education. Then we have a couple of new grants that were proposed. One of them is the targeted intervention grant, 2.6 billion for a new supplemental grant to complement the ELO plan. So this is not related to AB 86 and the ELO plan, although it's worded almost identical. And the issue we're going to have with this one is, again, to President Albiadi's point, he's cobbling monies together from state and federal sources. And when they do that, they expire at different points in time. And so it's an accounting nightmare for us. But additional services to students to accelerate learning. And when we say accelerate learning, I don't think it's necessarily because we have kiddos that have fallen behind due to distance learning and because of COVID, but it could be for those students that just need additional help because they need to get accelerated because they're AP or honors. And so it's not, I think a lot of times we talk about interventions and it comes off as to fix something that's broken or that's behind when it's not necessarily that way. This is meant for all students and to just accelerate learning in general. And so I can't read this from here, so I apologize, but the words in the little pencils are almost identical to the language that we see in the ELO. So it's a continuation of that. It'll be interesting to see. We're roughly 1%. So if that 2.6 billion comes to fruition, it's a rather large amount of money to be spent again in a very short period of time.
And this is one of the proposals that the legislature rejected in their proposal.
Yeah, they're pushing back hard because they see, districts are today passing their ELO plans and they have those plans in place. So this is on top of that. So they'd rather free those dollars up for the district to use it in other ways that might be needed.
So much like the targeted intervention grant we saw on the previous slide, we have an in-person instruction, health and safety grant. Again, this is designated to complement the in-person learning, in-person instruction portion of AB 86. This is not AB 86, but additional monies to be spent in the same manner. Again, this money can go back in time to July of 21. And then we get to spend it all the way out to June of 23. So again, $2 billion, we're roughly 1% of the state. Again, a lot of money to be spent in a very short period of time. However, this particular funding source does afford the district some flexibility and to be creative because it is not as specific as the previous slide.
And however, this too has been rejected by the legislative proposal.
I kind of wanted this money. Where do you see, health and safety grant. This particular monies were designed that if you wanted to do COVID testing or contact tracing and the cleaning and that kind of stuff that all goes together with that, that's what this money is for. So the COVID relief funds, all the federal funds we have, they all have that underlying element in it where you can tap into those resources. I know at one point the district thought that we were going to have to contract with Sacramento County to do contact tracing and to do testing and those kinds of things. We ended up, because there's so much money just within the county itself and the city of Sacramento that we were able to get some of those things done for free where it didn't have to come out of our pocket. So it's just more money of the same, which is what's difficult because you can only spend it once. I don't know about vaccinations as far as us
Yeah, testing
providing
and
them.
vaccinations are
Yeah.
allowed under the proposal.
Yeah. But I don't necessarily know that we were using our staff to do that. We would contract out for that.
That's correct.
Yeah. But we didn't get this money, according to Mr. Pierce. And then summer and after school programs. So when I was reading this, I was like, wow, that is intense. So it's a no cost after school and summer program for elementary students, but only to those districts with high concentration of low income students, English learners, or foster youth. Lots of services that are mandated in this model, meaning that you had to run no less than a 9-hour instructional day. For summer, you had to provide 30 days of summer school with at least 9 hours a day of instruction. It needed to build upon your existing after school and safety program, which is we refer to as our ACES programs. And then in order to get transition kindergarten up and running, they're requiring a reduced staffing ratio. So right now in our district, TK is run at 24-1. This would propose something much smaller. And it's a graduated implementation. So 1 billion to start in 21-22, meaning if you're an 80% district, you would be the first one to get an amount. And then the following year, it would drop down to 70%. So if we participated, we would be one of the districts to implement in 25-26. It's also then proposed that once this is fully implemented, that this amount would be folded into the concentration portion of the LCFF. So districts would continue to get this service. Under universal transitional kindergarten, it is the goal of the governor to have all 4-year-olds, regardless of income status, to be in some kind of a preschool or transitional kindergarten setting. So this is ramping up and changing at what point in time a child can enter public school setting in a TK grade level first.
This was you don't need to go back, Ms. Hayes, but the legislature did support that initiative almost in whole, but what they've done is extended it to 1 year out in terms of full implementation. And so rather than expanding the age eligibility by 3 months per year, it'd be reduced to 2 months and then give districts that extra fiscal year to be fully compliant.
Didn't this also have some reduced eligibility for TK, or was that just preschool?
I believe that's just preschool.
Okay. I'm sorry, not eligibility, the staffing ratio.
Yeah, and Ms. Chidas Espinosa, I apologize. I think that's one of the other components. There's a couple of different pots of money to help with all of these different programs, whether it's universal TK or preschool or after school. But I can take a closer look at that.
Yeah, I apologize. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I wanted to highlight it because if that is the case, then that essentially means we need more classrooms, a lot more classrooms, because not only would we be adding an entire new grade, we would be adding, if it's 10-1, we would need twice as many classrooms as we would need if we were adding a different grade.
To your point, the 10-1 is a number that's in one of those chunks of funding.
Yeah.
So that you would have to get to 10-1. And not only would we need additional classrooms across the district just to get to universal TK, but at that staffing ratio, we would need twice as many.
Yeah. And not to go back to this, but I caused a little bit of confusion earlier by casually using a term categorical. I was talking about this. So slide 6, I think it shows that instead of giving us the money that we were going to get to serve all kids, the governor proposes to give it to us, but force us to only use it towards this proposal. So in my mind, that's not, unrestricted money. So,
It looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck.
saying.
Moving on.
So universal transitional kindergarten is going to start with a planning grant. And then there are monies proposed for to help offset the cost of facilities. And we've seen that facilities money in there for full day kindergarten. But I think the amount's less, if I remember correctly.
And the legislature supports this as well, but they are putting significantly more money into the pot to help offset the cost of facilities.
So childcare and preschool, we don't talk a lot about preschool, but we have 2 different programs in our district, actually 3. We have state preschool, this is what is in reference to here. And then we have Head Start. The other component of preschool is Title I, but this isn't, Title I is how we distribute the funds out for preschool, not necessarily from the federal government or the state. So in this proposal, he's putting aside money to do 6,500 more slots for preschool. This is a lot of change. This one for me is a little bit more vague. It was difficult for me to wrap my head around. So we have state preschool. The funding wasn't cut. The funding's ongoing. They're going to give additional slots, but it's going to have an impact because of the transitional kindergarten. So where this program would normally pay for 4-year-olds, that's going to have to drop down then to 3-year-olds. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out with going forward. But as far as the funding for state preschool, we're looking at getting additional money and additional slots. So it was my understanding that we do have waiting lists for our preschool programs. But again, the goal of the governor is to have students age 4 and up receiving some sort of free education. Then we have a bunch of educator investments that are proposed. We have monies for to increase the teacher pipeline. We have Golden State Preparation Program. There's 500 million there. That's set aside as one time. It's essentially a grant award to have teachers go through this program and become teachers, and that they would have to work at a high priority school within 5 years of getting their credential.
Micro.
We have a couple of programs that we'll talk about on the next slide that we participate in. That this one in particular is new. All of them on, well, the first two. The one down at the bottom, the Classified Employee Teacher Credentialing Program, that's the one where we have our classified staff are going through to become teachers.
Microphone, sir.
Yes.
You get what I get?
Can you ask your question again? I'm sorry.
I mean, that would help support this ongoing program? You say we,
It's not ongoing. Those proposals are one time,
oh,
but we do have our own classified staff are going through a credentialing program to become teachers. So they've been funding that program on a one-time basis over multiple years. So we're seeing it being proposed again on a one-time manner.
oh, I see. Okay. That's what I thought.
Yeah, because I think we're in our third year.
Right.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, or what they propose, we need to develop teachers within school districts throughout California.
That's correct.
Okay.
So on this slide, the green and the red, the legislature supports in their package. They are putting some additional dollars from the governor's May revision, but they are rejecting the roadmap to pre-K.
And then the teacher residency program, we have that in our district as well. And then the credential fee waiver, they're proposing 20 million in one time for credentialing. I think I skipped one. No, I did not. And then for retention and training, we do see some of these monies are being requested again. Computer science certification, that has been an on again, off again proposal within the governor's budget, both with Newsom and with Governor Brown. Incentives for highly trained teachers, another 250 million, again, one time. It's incentives for national board certified teachers that teach in high poverty schools. The goal there is to retain and attract them mentors for the high poverty schools. And then we have the classified summer assistance program, which is $60 million proposed one time. It's state matching funds for classified employees for summer assistance. And we've talked about this off and on as a district of whether or not we want to implement this. There is a cost to the district to do this, although from the employee side, the state matches what the district withholds over the summer months. So for them, it's a advantage to do this program. However, there is a cost associated that we do not get reimbursed for. And then looking at the Educator Effectiveness Block Grant, again, 1.5 billion over 3 years, again, one time. For education agencies with training and resources for both classified, certificated, and administrative staff. And then 21st Century Leadership Academy, 25 million, again, one time. And then educator training areas, 15.4 million additional to assist with instruction in very specific areas.
What fiscal year is this referring to? Next year or this year?
These monies would start in 21-22 school year, assuming that they are adopted in the state's budget. By the time we see them, it may not be until spring. It normally takes quite a bit of time to get dollars out to the districts from the time the state adopts its budget.
Okay, thank you.
And then we have early education. The May Revise provides targeted professional learning for educators and early education assignments with one-time investments. So there's the early education professional development grant of 50 million. The training is intended to increase the number of highly qualified teachers in state preschool programs, transitional kindergarten and kindergarten assignments. And then community schools. This has been a new topic. I know that our district applied for a grant through the state for a community school. This is a school within a community. It's designed to have wraparound services for students and families. $3 billion investment over several years. I haven't seen where we've been notified where we fell out in that grant application process, but I do know that we did apply for them. So I'm going to make the assumption that the $3 billion is still a competitive grant process.
This is new proposed funding. I don't have an update on the original grant application.
Is your mic on? It's for the public, Mr. Press, so they can hear you.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Yeah, this is something that I've been pushing on community schools because you have full comprehensive services when you deal with children of poverty, when you have mental health issues, health issues, a variety of issues. So this is great. I'm really happy. Go forward.
So distance learning in 21-22, I know that there are a lot of our families are wondering what instruction is going to look like when we come back for the next school year. And as we know, distance learning, it is gone. There is nothing in current law that allows us to do any kind of distance learning in the format that we have done it in this past. There are a different number of programs by which a parent can enroll their child. One of the programs is independent study. It's run out of Las Flores. It is a K-12 program. However, independent study is getting an overhaul from the state level. So there are other options for parents and families. But it'll be different than what they experienced the last 12 months. And again, this is more information regarding the overhaul of independent study. The focus here was participation in engagement. So much like we had engagement records for our normal school year during distance learning, they want to continue that same process with our independent study programs. Right now, independent study is just that, it's done independently. You do meet with a teacher. I forget how many hours during the week. And then I know that they're open for like homework support and stuff like that. So, but it's not brick and mortar as far as showing up somewhere daily. And we use the same curriculum and everything else. So we'll see major changes, I think, in the independent study programs going forward.
Would this help support our academy schooling? Our continuation alternate high school?
Continuation schools are regular traditional schools. So students would be expected to attend their continuation school.
No, but at one of our which school? What,
You're talking about the virtual academy program?
oh, that's what I meant, virtual academy. Would that help support that program?
So virtual academy, even though we call it that, it's an independent study program.
So
it's the concept is the same as independent study.
okay. But we could change it like that. Right?
And there's been different conversations within the education side of the house. I don't want to speak for them, but trying to figure out how to best match everybody's needs out in the community. So there is a online component. I forget the software program now, it escapes me, Edgenuity, that Las Flores, the school itself uses. I would assume, I'm making another assumption unless Craig wants to bail me out here, that students can access curriculum through that platform.
Right.
That would be no different than any other school year. It's not specific to distance learning.
And I just to editorialize a little bit while Mr. Murray's coming up to the podium, that I think from everyone's perspective, not just mine, This is an attempt, so the governor and the legislature are really concerned that districts are going to find a loophole and that they're going to try to find and stick to some form of distance learning. And so one of the unintended consequences of this proposal and what's kind of rolling out in an attempt to keep that from happening and ensure that districts are going to in-person instruction as the main first option, it's doing undue harm to the traditional, if you will, independent study programs that work for students and families. So I think this will be one of the more highly debated subjects with the legislature because we understand the intent, but it's going to do harm to students and families who have been well served through independent study for a variety of reasons. This kind of throws that out the window as an option and doesn't give students and families the freedom in their educational model that they needed under independent study. So I think this is one we'll have to pay very close attention to.
I agree. And just in terms of Edgenuity, the reason why we've adopted Edgenuity in our independent study program is because it is a rigorous and quality program. And so the work to begin to improve that system happened a while ago and continues. So we feel that is a good option for our students who choose that pathway.
Very good. Thank you. Good work.
So next steps. We have our 2021 estimated actuals along with our 21-22 budget that we'll be bringing to you for public hearing on June 15th. We're anticipating that the state will adopt its budget on time. June 22nd, we will be back to have the board adopt the 21-22 budget. And then we have the 45-day revise. So we have 45 days from which time the state adopts its budget for us to implement and update our budget on any of the new monies, less monies, whatever the changes were. Then we'll be bringing to you the 2021 unaudited actuals in September. And then the 21-22 first interim report will be brought to you in December. And we'll get ready for the 22-23 school year.
You know, one of the things that's become very apparent under Governor Newsom is when Governor Brown put a budget out in May, it largely just came through, and what we adopted and made our plans off in the May revise came to be true when the budget was adopted. And so the revise process wasn't as necessary. The reality is there's no way we avoid a 45-day revise this year because the legislature is going to, has already cast the so that they're going to significantly change what the governor's done. But we still have to build off what the governor proposed on May 30th because it's the only way we make our timeline. So the 45-day revise will just be a reality. It's just, I think it's the new way of doing business under the current administration.
Okay, you're finished, correct? Okay. We'll go ahead and I'll do a roll call for any questions or comments. So Ms. Jamerson?
Actually, all of my questions were answered in your presentation. I really appreciate your thoroughness, but also succinctness in being able to explain. This is very complex, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Charis Espinoza?
I have a lot of thoughts and opinions, but nothing that's going to move this conversation forward, so I'll keep them to myself.
Thank you. Mr. Fortuna?
I don't have a direct question for Shannon, but with respect to one of the items, perhaps Mark or Craig or Cindy could jump in. With the additional dollars that are going to go into dual enrollment, what do we have plans with respect to what we're going to do to expand those opportunities for students?
Just clarifying on that question, I wasn't sure if we get some of that money or if all of that was for community.
I'll have to get you information on the particulars with who gets the money. But in terms of dual enrollment, yes, especially through CTE, you're going to see more opportunities for both dual enrollment, concurrent enrollment. through curriculum and also through some revisions of board policies that should be coming to you soon. So yes, that work revising and refining that is in play right now.
Okay, thank you.
You good, Mr. Fortuna? Thank you. Mr. Perez? Did you have another question?
Did we apply for the basic needs center? Or is there still time to do that?
I think that's a community college proposal.
What?
I think that's a community college proposal. It's like homeless navigators and things like that. It's for community college students.
You sure about that?
Yes.
Ms. Jamerson from our community college world is.
Okay. 13. Oh, for the general public, page 16, you mentioned that, and I'm concerned also that for a lot of these programs that we're getting right now, the issue in Title I and this funding, the issue of surplanting. Can you explain to the general public what surplanting is and also what we could do about that? Make sure that we do not do that?
You
Or
always
maybe I
ask
should
the
direct
most
that.
difficult questions, Mr. Perez. I'm going to try my best to explain
Okay.
what that means.
Okay.
In the world of supplement versus supplant, the district has to demonstrate that we have a base program.
Right.
Once you identify you have a base program, then any other funds received outside of the state then supplement that instruction. So in the case, I'm going to use Title I as an example. Title I must be supplemental to the basic program at a school site. What that means is you can't use Title I money for textbooks. You can't use them for basic pencils and paper and supplies and whatnot. It is an expectation from the federal government that the state of California provides LEAs with enough funds to build a basic program. With that said, the state changed how we receive money. So the term categorical in the traditional sense is no longer there. It's now the local control funding formula, with the idea that districts then would have the flexibility to provide what's needed in the form of a service or an action and not be in a box with what the state thinks is best for your district. When that happens, it becomes difficult for the district then to demonstrate a base program because the monies we are receiving is still out of Prop 98. It's still base money. However, we're dictated on how we spend the money as far as the different types of students that it's supposed to target. So you can still use it school-wide, but it's targeted toward those children. When you target to the same children that you receive federal monies for, that complement of money for the same action and service becomes difficult for the district to demonstrate that we're not supplanting services with federal money.
Right.
So when we talk about the concentration grant and how they describe how you're supposed to meet the needs of certain specific students, it becomes very difficult then for us to spend any kind of grant money that we get from the federal government because they are now competing for the same service.
Right.
So we have to be very careful when we start buying the same service with state general fund money, that it is different and that we ensure that we have a base and what that looks like. So my friend Mark Cerruti and I have lots of conversation about what a base is so that we can ensure that with our supplemental concentration monies that we are supplementing the base as well as all of our federal and other state monies that we receive. Did I do a good job?
Very well done.
Thank you.
And I hope the public learned a lot. Oh, shoot, okay. So somebody mentioned a new report by the legislature today. And can you name that report for the general public also?
Oh, I'm not sure if it has a formal name, but I can certainly grab it here. I printed it hot off the press before our meeting began tonight. Let me find it, Mr. Press.
Okay.
So it is the 2021-22 state budget legislature's version. And it's 13 pages of lots of information about how their proposal differs from the May revise.
Can you forward a copy of that to all board members, please? Sure. Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna just ask one more question. And I like to have I guess maybe it's a request. What is a community school? Because that's the terminology I should have been using all this time when I talked about health services in school, mental health services, full comprehensive services, very similar to what they do in primary care clinics. We want primary care clinics to be full comprehensive services. And I see the future that, especially in low-income areas, poverty areas, that the student needs us. I keep on saying this to everybody, that's a great need. You have to deal with the whole child, not just one specific educational issue with a child, because they bring a lot of issues to school. And we're doing most of that. But yet I think we're gonna be growing in this other arenas, especially health. We do a very good job at screening, dental, hearing, and all this stuff, but it's a matter of time that we need possibly a whole new health section, like we're improving within the mental health arena in our school systems. So again, if it's possible, we have a presentation? What is a community school, and and if there's models within this geographical Northern California, or if they received a Golden Bell Award from the California School Board Association, there could be a model program. What is a model of a community school?
We can take a look at that for sure. One of the things that's finally happening is there's funding to go along with it.
Right.
Previously, it was you're having to use existing funding that wasn't enough to do the basic work that you were charged with doing. And then there was the work towards community schools. So we'll look deeper into this, and it's why we applied for the grant. But now they are actually putting dollars behind doing the work instead of carving it out of existing funds that you're receiving. So there is some potential here for sure.
And the other issue is that, there's going to be a lot of funding, but is there going to allow us to have staff to help us do this also? That's another concern or issue that I have within this parameter. I know you people are.
You're talking, they're adding a bunch of program. Are they allowing for staff to support the program in the grant?
Right. That's an issue that.
We may have to get back to.
So all of the monies allow for staff costs.
Excuse me?
All of the monies that we've talked about allow for staff. The
Oh.
problem's going to be finding staff. I don't know if Mr. Riley wants to comment on recruitment efforts, or Mr. Singh.
But, yes, finding the staff, but the other piece is if it's one time in nature, it's like the other challenges. If these dollars, they need to carve these dollars out for the long term. If you're going to build a community school, that needs to be a long-term venture. You can't ramp up a community school and then the funding goes away and all those services go away. So while the seed money is important, the idea here is that the very first one is, spending 1.1 billion in ongoing funding. So this has to be a sustainable effort if we're going to make it worthwhile. And so that this is different than we've heard in the past. The term community school has been around 5+ years in this definition, but the ongoing funding has not been part of the conversation, and now it appears to be.
Well, yeah, that's a conversation we've been having a lot of, but yet I foresee this happening as part of the general fund. We have the legislative staff, the legislators, both Senate and Assembly, who before they had stepped in the shoes as assemblymen and senators, they were educators. And the more progressive people that are making these changes are these individuals who are the chair of a variety of committees. where we have more educators within the legislative bodies today, and I foresee this happening. This is gonna, at the federal level and also for the state of California. And I'm very happy that, the presentation you have and these changes coming about, it's about time. And I'm happy.
Great,
Thank you.
agreed. Dr. Martinez Salier.
Thank you for a very thorough presentation. I just have two quick questions. One is regarding slide number 22, the summer and after-school programs. Do we have existing programs now that fulfill the 9-hour day limit on this? Or do you foresee that a possibility in the future?
I'm sorry, Crystal, can you
See
repeat?
how it says that you have to have expanded learning and a 9-hour school day?
Yes.
For some of the programs, are we gonna be looking at our existing programs to apply for this, or is that something down the road in the future?
So with this particular one, it's money on top of what we already see for after-school programs. And so it's expanding it. It would go from, like, I'm gonna give an example, from 8 in the morning, kids get out at 2:30. They're supposed to start their after-school program at 3, and it has to run till 6. I'm thinking this money is then designed to capture that entire time so that you're using dual funding sources in order to accomplish a 9-hour instructional day.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, because I see that the projected out years is more funding for the 5 billion, so I just.
Right,
wanted
and this
to-
is concentrated at elementary. We do have ACES programs at middle school and high school. They're same funding source, but they refer to them as assets. But this particular money is targeted to very specific subgroups of students and at the elementary level. Again, it's to ramp up kindergarten and transitional kindergarten. So they're wanting to open that door for students ages 4 and up all through that elementary level in order to accelerate learning.
I remember some time ago, years ago, in pre-K and things of that nature, we had like an expanded day. I want to
Yes.
say it was till 6 p.m. So for some of the families that may be working or parents, it's kind of a bit, and can be a bit challenge finding the staff for the
Agreed.
ratios. So
Yeah.
just, I just had that question.
Yeah.
Another question I had was on slide 25, when he talks about additional slots for state preschool. That's meaning under the state guidelines, eligibility income guidelines. So it's not like a universal all slots for all students. You still have to meet those guidelines, correct?
I believe that's correct. So he's got 2 different programs that are happening. One is for regardless of your income eligibility, you get to play. This particular one, yes, it's still under the state guidelines. So income eligibility is a component of that, but more slots. What's been happening over the last couple of years, at least the stuff that's coming out from the state, is there's concerns that the slots are there and they're not being used. So we saw that shift coming out of state preschool and going out to private entities for preschool. So they're still trying to target this particular area. I know in our district, we're unique in that we use credentialed teachers, which isn't always the case. So I think our program is just a little bit different than most. We are still running part day. And I know we had piloted, I think through Head Start, full day. I know that from the Head Start's perspective, they want to see us go full day. And so maybe with this, it's something that maybe the ed side of the house might be looking into, just because there's more resources out there.
Thank you, because I know Twilight sometimes captures the families who may not fall under the income right guidelines. So for additional families, so I was wondering how that's going to work. So thank you again for your presentation. Appreciate it.
Mr. Yang, may I ask a quick question before she changes the slide?
Absolutely.
Thank you. When we're looking at this slide, are we, they're saying 6,500 more slots in Elk Grove or in the state?
In the state,
And $250 million in the whole state,
that's correct.
which would mean we would, and we often get 1% of something. So it's about $2.5 million.
That's correct.
And 60,
I think I want to say our state preschool program right now, we receive 1.6 million.
thank you. Mr. Yang?
Just want to say thank you for the presentation, and I hope that the students will use, or will will participate in some of these programs, especially the after schools programs and so forth. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's a lot of information, a lot of great questions. I just look forward as this pre-K starts to shake out to see how much of this money we can get, how much we can use, how many facilities we're going to need. I mean, there are a lot of unknowns, but I know as a district, we like, we're very positive on the PK, but what's it going to take? I'm sure staff is figuring out. So that is it. Thank you very much, Ms. Hayes.
Thank you.
Our next item is update on COVID-19 relief funding. And Ms. Soriano said we have public comment on this.
Thank you, Madam Board President Albiani. The first person who would like to make public comment would be Ms. Becky Strobel via Zoom.
Hello, my name is Becky Strobel and I'm representing the EGUSD school social workers. I started my career with Elk Grove in 2019 with a team of 9 social workers hired under the low performing student block grant. Over the past 2 years, social workers have become an integral part of the multi-tiered systems of support framework under PBIS. We have helped build upon and refine school-wide systems and collectively have provided direct services to hundreds of students and families. We sent the letter today and we are speaking with you now because of concerns with the retention and recruitment of quality school social workers in our district. From the team of 9 hired in 2019, 6 have left for other permanent positions. I personally participated in 4 rounds of interviews where multiple qualified individuals were offered the job, and all but 2 of these declined due to the temporary contract and low salary. Currently, there are 4 secondary regions in EGUSD that have been without a social worker for the majority of this school year. We know that our students and families have experienced significant challenges over the past year. The COVID-19 pandemic has compounded social, emotional, and mental health needs. Our most vulnerable student populations will benefit from having consistent support, especially as we are preparing to welcome students back on campus for the upcoming school year. We believe that it is imperative to prioritize sustainable systems of support to serve these students and support teachers and staff for the coming years. With the 2-year grant coming to an end, we are aware that CARES Act funding has been allocated for the 9 social work positions for the coming year. However, this means the position is still temporary. As we just heard from the May revision of the 21-22 governor's budget, more funding is being allocated to K-12 schools than ever before, and statewide school districts are prioritizing mental health support for students. In order to retain the current social workers in our district and attract high quality staff to fill the vacancies, we respectfully ask the board to consider using ongoing funds to make the contract for school social workers in EGUSD permanent. We want to do the work. We want to continue supporting the school communities that we have built relationships over the past years. We want to see the support systems grow to effectively serve even more students. We also need job security. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any written comments, Ms. Soriano?
Yes, Madam Board President Albiani, we do have some written comments. The first comment is anonymous. It does say, with the amount of funding that EGUSD is getting to support our students, please consider giving the money actually to the students. To think that summer school is able to spend $14 per student for a 4-week program for materials is absolutely amazing. Think of all the creative ways teachers can engage their students. Sadly, teachers are only able to spend a total of $100 for our startup for the entire next school year. We are literally picking and choosing between ordering a class set of crayons that will need to be replaced by January and sentence strips or colored copy paper. $100 adds up very quickly, and this teacher will still have to spend her own money to support the students in the classroom. We have spent a lot of our own money this past year, just as we have in the past. It would be nice to have the district give each teacher money to spend on supplies. I appreciate you seriously considering this for the upcoming school year. The next comment is also anonymous. Transitional kindergarten is a hands-on learning program that is filled with oral language, fine motor skills, gross motor skills, foundational skills, but most importantly, social emotional skills. The difference between the beginning of the year to the end is always astounding. TK is a very different grade level, and we are an incredibly proud group of teachers that collaborate together weekly. It is clear that TK teachers create most of what our students need to learn and keep them engaged. We have a small curriculum, but it is nothing compared to grades K, kindergarten, and up. I urge you to consider granting transitional kindergarten teachers funds to support the amazing learning that goes on within the TK classrooms. We purchase all of our own supplies, create and copy our own books, purchase our own fine motor activities and tubs to organize them. Please consider TK as you are breaking down the funds that were given to support our students. TK is often forgotten and such an incredibly important foundational grade level. The next comment is also anonymous. Dear Elk Grove Board of Education, as you consider approving funding to assist students in returning to campus for the 21-22 school year, I hope that you will consider adding more school counselors to middle school and high school campuses. Our current counselor to student ratio is on average 450 to 1. I am hoping that you will use funding allocated to support the academic and social emotional needs of our families to add more school counselors to each campus to lower student to counselor ratios. The American School Counselors Association recommends a ratio of 250 to 1. School counselors are an incredible support and resource for our students, families, and staff on campus. With a return to campus and so much having changed and endured during COVID, we have never needed school counselors more. Regular counselor contact can increase the number of students on track for graduation, the number of students meeting college eligibility requirements, higher attendance rates on campus, higher academy and pathway participation, safer campuses, and targeted support for vulnerable populations such as English language learners and special education. This district has always been a leader in the Sacramento area. Show our community that we support the academic, career, and personal social needs of our families and students by placing more counselors in EGUSD schools. Thank you. The next comment is from Ms. Lorraine Pryor. Good afternoon, board members and staff within EGUSD. I'm writing to remind you of the urgency of this moment as you decide where to direct monies. For over 3 years, I've been coming before you all talking about the issues that Black students have been having in EGUSD, from disproportionate discipline to issues with belongingness. There have been a few movements to address some of my concerns, but nothing substantial. I've continually asked for a plan to address these issues, among others, and to date, a plan has not been presented. BYLP has forwarded a plan to you all, and we are asking for you to consider funding it. We will know your values by how you choose to spend this money that is not even coming from EGUSD coffers. We are asking you to move with intentionality to address these pervasive issues that have landed EGUSD in the #1 spot for disproportionate discipline of Black children. We are ready and willing to work with EGUSD so that Black students are seen, heard, and supported. Thank you in advance, Ms. Pryor. And the last public comment is from Exquisitive Hundley. Good evening. My name is Exquisitive Hundley. I am a community member and advocate with BYLP. We have submitted a proposal before this board to help insulate and protect our Black children. BYLP has been a part of the community with advocacy and programming for Black students for over 20 years. Hopefully, this board will recognize the need of urgency and partner with our organization to ensure that the Black students in Elk Grove
get much needed support they need not only for survival, but soon thrive. BYLP is here and will continue to be here. Now is the time to show the community action behind the words of community building. Thank you, Exquisitive Hundley.
Thank you to our public. We'll move on. Ms. Hayes will present the update on COVID-19 relief funding.
Okay, I'm going to be difficult. I apologize. So board members, you guys have your screen, so I'm assuming you can see this on your screen well. If not, you had a hard copy, yes? Good, okay. This is we brought actually to the board on, I think it was the beginning of April, and we discussed the different rounds of COVID relief funding that the district was going to receive. And at that point in time, a lot of the amounts were estimated. I'm going to go through this document here that shows how much the district has received and how much we have spent to date. And then we'll have a discussion of where we go next. So these are very, very large amounts of money, and it's very difficult with the spending timeline that the state and the federal government have dictated. So looking up at the top, we're going to talk about federal funding first. The funding is coming from various different sources. The first one is the Coronavirus Relief Fund. That was one that we've received first, along with the State General Fund, Prop 98, and the Governor's Emergency Education Relief or GEAR Fund. Those monies, along with the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, referred to as ESSER, those monies, that 57 million, we had to adopt a plan by September 28th of 2020, of which the board did. As of this report, which I think was prepared April 30th, we have spent 49 million of the 57, and we currently have a balance of 7.64 million. When we go into round two, there's another 58 million that came in the form of ESSER. They call it ESSER number 2. Those monies have not been expensed, and we do not have currently a plan for them. However, we do have spending guidelines attached to them, but that funding is going to expire in June of 2023. Then the round 3 funding, we received 2 different components. We have a federal component and we have a state component. Looking at the federal component, we have estimated 132.13 million. That's coming to us again in the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. We're calling it ESSER number 3. Those monies will expire in June of 24. Then looking at the state funding, at the same time we received round 3 federal funding, we also received monies through Assembly Bill number 86. It came to us in 3 different components. There's a homeless component, expanded learning opportunities, which the board took action on our plans for tonight, and then the in-person instruction grant. All 3 of those components will sunset June 30 of 22. So as you can see, there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of planning that needs to happen in a very short period of time. So tonight, what we want to do is of the round 1 monies that are going to expire in June 30th of 22, we would like the board to review a timeline by which we want to repurpose those monies. So we think that we have fulfilled all of the original LCP plan. There were things within that plan that just didn't come to fruition. An example of that is we had set aside $1 million to contract with the county to do contract tracing and some of those other pieces related to COVID, which we did not need to use. So of the 7.64 million in your packet, there are spending guidelines that go along with them. I'm not going to read through all of them. There's quite a lot here. The gist is the same across all of them. There's a couple of caveats, like within ESSER number 3, we have to set aside 20% for direct instruction. But all of the ESSER components, 1, 2, and 3, all have the same intent behind them. So there's not a whole lot of strings. The only one that we see that there's quite a bit of strings with is the GEAR funds. And the GEAR funds, you can see the spending guidelines that are here. It can be difficult to spend these just in the manner that they are, because these are used to mitigate learning loss, which is different than what the ESSER funds are for. So the ESSER funds are all about accelerating and bridging learning, whereby this one was mitigating learning loss. So removing all of those barriers so that the students can learn. So that's providing lunches and breakfast and PPE equipment and those kinds of things. So it's kind of like on the outside of instruction is how I would look at that. Going down here. The in-person instruction grant, very, very open-ended. The only caveat with that one is we cannot use it for IDEA activities. What that means is it's students with disabilities. So anything that's written in an IEP, we can't use in-person instruction grant. And the ELO, we just reviewed that and the board took action. So here's the timeline. Tonight, we brought to you discussion to review this timeline and to review the funding sources that are still available. June 3rd, we anticipate meeting with LSLT and Cabinet to review recommendations along with our labor partners. Cabinet then is going to begin the development of a draft spending plan. Then on June 9th, we're going to complete the draft plan. Then on June 10th, the LCAP collaborative team will receive a presentation and discuss the draft plan. We then want to post the agenda item for the board review on June 11th, and then bring it for the plan back for feedback on June 15th, and then ultimately adopt the plan on June 22nd. And the reason for this is we want to deal with the leftover monies from round 1. So 7.64 is what we talked about. Of the 7.64, we are recommending that $2 million, well, it's almost $3 million total, go directly to food nutrition to support the meals for children. And then that leaves the balance then to come up with a plan. So there's a couple of components that we would like to get board's approval on so that we can have them implemented and up and ready to go once the traditional school year starts in August. I'm going to pause there, take any questions. Yeah.
So just a
Can you go back to page, can you
okay.
can you go to page 1 to clarify what money on that chart we are talking about?
So looking at round 1.
We are talking about on the bottom, the
On the bottom.
7.64 only,
Only.
and 3 million, we're talking about going straight to food and services. So now staff will be bringing to us based on our input, the public input, all the input we received, the first round of money to be spent on 4.64.
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And the idea being, there's a list of hundreds of things. And we want to be able to work through things in some digestible chunks. And so the first goal here is to finish out round 1 with the idea, what are the absolute top priorities and things that are actually doable? So a priority and doable in a short amount of time. And so we'll actually be listening, the piece that you saw there is Cabinet will be sitting in on the learning leadership team meeting this week, where the program leads, I'll use Matt Espinosa as an example with regards to equity. So if you look at that list of 300 plus things, Matt has a group of them. And those have been ideas that he has, and they're also ideas that have come from parents, they've come from students, but they're the ideas. But they're not in a prioritized list right now. They're just the ideas around equity that he thinks are of value. So what they're actually doing now is they're going to work through a process by which they identify the order in which those things should be prioritized from the program lead's perspective, and the rationale of what it is, what will change as a result, and what are the expected outcomes. Just like so the process will be very clean. But we're going to try to do this piece in a way that allows the board to see that list prioritized based on the expertise of the district from all of the ideas that we've heard from all the stakeholders over the past several weeks. So and we're trying to do that in a concise timeline. Everything's a concise timeline right now, but it's the $4.6 million or so of the highest priority and things we can actually get done. If Chromebooks were the absolute priority as an example, we couldn't pay for Chromebooks today and get them for the start of school in August. So that wouldn't meet the criteria of really important and doable in a very short amount of time. So that's what we're looking for in wrapping up round one is the idea behind that concept.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Charis Espinozo, if any questions or comments?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fortuna?
Yes, a couple. Does the June 15th meeting preclude additional board proposals?
Yes, we can certainly look at additional pieces that the board has ideas about.
So that would be the time for us to bring forward additional proposals. What is the timeline going to look like for round two?
So we haven't set the actual, we have some broad guidelines that we can go to what round two and round three look like, and we can share that with you. The first piece is trying to finish up round one, and this is the tight timeline for round one. Ms. Hayes, do you have the draft dates that we worked around for 2 and 3?
We had discussed, Mr. Fortuna and the board, we had discussed round 2 and round 3 to come up with a plan to actually implement actions and services that span that 2-year period and get us out to June of 24. We anticipate bringing back, I don't think it was necessarily actions and services, but we would be engaging the board in September of 21 on the 58 million and the 132 million.
Yeah, because the idea we're trying to work through, Mr. Porcine, is so when do the funds need to be expended, and by what time would we need to start expending them to meet that timeline? And then the next question is, and what timeline do we need to do the planning so that we would be ready to start the spending when we would need to start the spending in order to expend the resources by the date. So that we're working backwards, and we'll have a better idea a more specific idea for the board. And I think we could probably do that as part of the 15th presentation to give the board some feedback on that. But we're trying to plan backwards from when funds need to be expended.
So if any member of the board has a proposal that they would want to see implemented for the 21-22 school year, then it would have to be brought forward on June 15th and approved by the board on June 15th.
Yes, to this point, we've captured everything that we've heard so far from parents, from bargaining units, from students. When the board shared ideas, we captured those, and those are included in the on the overall list right now. We actually have it labeled with board member in parentheses next to it. So that's been captured up to this point. But
You
again,
want to add
Dave.
something else prior so staff can review it?
we could have that conversation right now if there's ideas.
It's, let me digress for a second, and then I'll answer the question you asked. Input has been received from many sectors. The cabinet is going to put together the plan, correct?
We're going to capture what is shared by the department leads and program leads as they put the ideas in a sequential order. So they're going to share that information with us. And then we're going to look at their top priorities, put that piece together, and that's what we'll bring to the board. We'll probably bring more items than we have the funding to do. And the board will have the opportunity on the 15th to make recommendations on things that they would want brought back for approval on the 22nd. And again, that would be to finish out round one,
Right.
knowing almost, many of the other ideas are things we'll be able to do, but they'll be further down the pipeline as these funds roll out.
Right, but we're talking on the 15th and the 22nd about what can be put in place for the 21-22 school year.
Correct.
And so if your assessment of what we should go forward with is not our assessment, then on the 15th, we need to put those issues on the table.
The board ultimately makes the decision on what things will be funded.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Press.
Found the dates. I knew I had the dates, but I didn't know where they were at. So it was this one, right? Okay. Okay, one question to you over here, Mr. Hoffman. Can you remind me what documents are you referring to that has the list of the priorities or suggestions from stakeholders?
So we did a BC. So we've been capturing all of the ideas that have come through all the feedback processes that we've done.
Right.
We've been collecting that information. And I don't remember the date on it, but we did a BC.
Is it a BC? What number is it?
And off the top of my head, I don't know, but I can send out a reminder
Okay.
on what it was. But we list actually all the ideas that are there. Some of those ideas we captured and became part of the ELO plan. And so we took some of those things of the expanded learning, the summer school type things.
Mhm.
They made sense to fit into the ELO. And we figured out very quickly that those things alone, we're going to take up the entire ELO grant. So those items made up the ELO grant that you approved earlier tonight.
Yes,
that was-
like,
So you
for
did-
example, if I wanted a Wi-Fi for the whole district, it would have taken the whole budget, right?
You wanted Wi-Fi?
Yeah, to cover the whole district.
We got Wi-Fi.
I mean, for the,
community?
what I mean, it's the old Wi-Fi, I mean, big like Comcast.
We're not ready to be Comcast yet. But that was the idea is we went through the list
Okay,
and then we narrowed down, okay, these things make sense
for
for ELO.
AT&T.
And they ended up taking up that entire allocation. So that's
Okay.
what we brought you tonight.
Okay.
And then, so the next piece is to go back through the list and, okay, are there things,
Uh-huh.
are there people, are there positions, are there resources that we can get done in relatively short order that would be a great benefit for the start of the school year?
So the other document that Mr. Forcina brought up, the ideas for the board. Now, the staff is gonna provide those ideas prior to the board meeting, the 15th, in our board package?
So we provided it one time already and the ideas that
No,
came
for the
from.
15th meeting, the one that I guess the cabinet, he mentioned that I guess the cabinet's gonna go through the list and provide another, I guess.
We will provide the board with a BC
BC,
that summarizes our work as a result of the meeting we're doing with the learning leadership team
prior to
prior to the
June
15th.
15th meeting.
Yes,
So I assume that it's gonna.
that's not
come in-
over promising, right, Mark?
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, that's fair. And what I would like to see, it's very good, I like the spreadsheet. But like in round two, you had the coronavirus relief funds, you got 35.20. But of that 35.20, what is the balance of that particular project? And then the state general fund, Prop 98, 5.08, what is today's balance of that particular money? Yes, I know that you put the totals for all those particular programs, but I like to see of those 4 federal funding in round 1, I like to see today's balance. And then also in state, in round 1, there isn't, well, yes, in round 1, there isn't. And the same thing is round 2, you have elementary and secondary emergency relief funds. You have 58.83, and you have a total, then we still have, we haven't spent that. So that one, okay, so.
So Mr. Press, I think you have the information in front of you. So you have this, yes?
What?
You have this paper, right?
Correct.
Okay. If you go to the far right-hand side,
Oh, okay,
so in year of the
Okay.
3.82, we have 2.69 left.
Very good. I didn't go that far to the right.
That's okay.
Very good. Very good.
Are you good?
Oh, but
Yes.
hold on here. But again, hold on. It doesn't tell me, what I'm trying to get at, for each round, how much the balance is. But on the right, that's a total. It looks again like the total.
So we have not spent anything in round 2 or round 3.
Okay,
And in round 1, we have 2.69 remaining in the gear money.
I see, okay.
And then,
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, that's, I should highlight that yellow. Okay,
And Ms.
very
Hayes,
good,
the
very good. I
balance
see.
is- The balance is the ESSER
Okay,
from round 1.
okay. Very good. I see what went.
We good, sir?
Very good on that. Okay, and so I guess you mentioned that for June 15th, you would also include the actual dates that we will be talking about those particular funds, like September 21st, you mentioned?
yeah, we would like to bring back a timeline in September,
Okay.
knowing that we need to have a plan to start the next school year.
So
that would
that's
be the
where
goal.
also the 21st would be for the round 2 and 3? You're gonna
Yes.
combine that?
Yes.
Okay, I get that clear. Okay, now what are other school districts doing? Is everybody within our staff that are seeing what they're using or anything like that, or very innovative things that we're not doing
And so,
out of the box?
yeah, so I meet with the superintendents from across Sacramento County every 2 weeks, and actually every week in some cases. And so we are sharing ideas with regards to, especially then the big conversation has been the ELO grant, because that's what everybody's been working on. It's the one the board took action on earlier tonight. And so we are having those conversations and working pieces through. And I would say we're right in the ballpark with a lot of the programs that others are offering. I will say, to our credit, because of the size of our staff and then the number of people that we have working on this work, and Aaron Sipes is as an example of that. We've been able to share a lot of the ideas that we're implementing, and people are building off of those ideas. But we're certainly open to and listening to the ideas of others as well. So yeah, the lines of communication are open. I got 2 superintendents that have been buzzing me tonight that want to have a conversation after tonight, and a member of the assembly also. So everybody wants to know what we're doing, but we're also paying attention to what others are doing and working through the process.
Well, speaking to those other superintendents at other school districts, did you come across any particular ideas or any other project that we may have not listed or brought something out of the ordinary or very progressive?
I don't have anything that jumps off the top of my mind right now through the ELO piece. Through the ELO, I know one thing that we provided support when is you mentioned the virtual academy
Right.
earlier. That's something we've had in place for several years now. And a number of school districts are actually applying to get CDS codes to get their virtual academy recognized. And so we've been able to be supportive there. But we are listening to, as people are developing their virtual academies, as they come up with ideas that might be new and different for us, since we've been doing our program for a while. That's one area where I've been listening for interesting ideas that are allowable under the more restrictive requirements that appear to be coming from the governor and legislature with regards to independent study and virtual academies.
Oh, another thing I was just thinking the other day or just recently is that, I see educational TV, Channel 6, I love, but other cable networks, we're so big of a school and we have so much talent. Over here, our IT personnel, they could produce satellite live board meetings. They could, Consumos Oaks High School is a TV production that does the annual Golden One presentation, graduation presentation. I think that's the way to go. We need to develop more academy or that production within our high schools, radio and the social medias. If we could possibly use that monies for that to expand these type of services and learning opportunities to our students, that'd be great, because this is not going to be, like I said before, this is not going to be the first time or second time that we're going to have an emergency situation, because we should be flexible and use the latest technology. And I like to see those programs expand, and with the arts, theater, actors, presentations like that in that arena.
Right. Well, thanks to the board's action at the last meeting, we're moving forward with the Extron technology infrastructure at our Title I schools.
Right.
And that's an example of leveraging Title I funds and supplemental concentration funds to be able to really update state-of-the-art technology and presentation capability at our Title I schools. And it may be something we're able to do at other schools down the road through this process that we're talking about right now. So the upgrading of the infrastructure and what we think of as the modern classroom is certainly something that's on the table for this board as we move through the planning process in the next several months.
So has there been some of the suggestions on our list in that arena also that you could speak of?
I mean, the Extron example organically grew from our individual school sites that were working through their local LCAPs and trying to use their Title I funds to be able to do this work on an individual basis. As that work was being done, individual schools, district staff recognized this was happening in pockets and said, you know what? There's an opportunity here to leverage this and get it done in a more powerful way. And at the same time, COVID happened. Some programs we weren't able to run like we normally run, which allowed for one-time funds to be available. And now we're able to do what a few schools were thinking about trying to do on their own. We're now doing it every single Title I school moving forward. And so we're going to learn from this and make sure that it's as powerful as we think it is. And if it is, then that's something we can leverage moving forward. And again, the influx of one-time dollars that are available because of COVID, if we leverage them correctly, will pay dividends for us for years and years to come, long after the funds have expired.
Very good. That's it. Thank you very much. Good job.
Thank you. Dr. Martinez-Alier?
Just looking forward to the conversations and having all the information categorized or brought back to the board so we can see it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Yang?
Thank you for your presentation. I just look forward to see how these programs unfold and really anxious to see the data to provide feedback from the users. So Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yang. Ms. Jamerson?
Thank you. I'm looking forward to receiving the list and really hoping that as the cabinet prioritizes that list, that it's, we use the equity lens through everything, not just the Office of Equity, but in everything that we're looking at. I'm excited to see what we're going to be able to do for the students.
Good point.
Thank you. Thank you for that reminder. Yes, I too am looking forward to the next meeting. And that is it. That concludes our special meeting at 7:26. Thank you for joining us. Oh,
I have a question, because I think it's an okay question.
does it have to do with this agenda item, sir?
Yeah,
Excellent.
there was a.
Is your mic on?
Yeah, it's on. I guess I wasn't close enough. There was a letter read with respect to social workers. Will you be addressing Ms. Strobel, or will the superintendent address Ms. Strobel?
Staff will be doing, the reality is her statement's correct. We took the social workers off of the layoff list in March, and we guaranteed those slots would be funded for this year. We haven't actually identified which of the sources will do it, but that I would expect that will be one of the items that will be on the list for the board on the 15th. That would make sense.
Does that satisfy you? Okay, then I'm concluding this meeting. No one else can talk. It is 7:27. It's agenda.